Well, this one's probably got the best world building in the MCU. I mean, it's tough to compete with battle rhinos. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 18th movie in the MCU, Marvel's 2018 superhero action film, Black Panther. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Black Panther stars Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, and Lupita Nyong'o, and was directed by Coogler. It tells the story of T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, who must consider Wakanda's political policies when challenged by an enemy known as Killmonger. A movie like this is a bit challenging to review so many years after its release. Some movies, perhaps most movies, can be approached and discussed in the same way no matter how long it's been. But that would be doing a disservice here. Not only did this movie become a cultural phenomenon that has connected with many people on a level never before seen because of its historic cultural significance, but it also starred the late Chadwick Boseman, who not only gave a great performance, but also very much embodied the character of T'Challa. Both of these things mean something, and have an impact when revisiting the film. They provide context, but they don't change the film's core. The movie's still the same, it's just got some extra layers that need to be addressed and balanced during a review. I mention it for nearly every MCU film these days, but prior to his introduction in Captain America Civil War, I knew nothing about the character of Black Panther. I don't read the comics, so that's not really that much of a surprise. I had no clue who Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, or the Guardians of the Galaxy were before their movies either. But I found Black Panther to be an interesting component of Civil War, and was curious to see more from him and learn more about the character. Unlike most of the standalone character introduction movies in the MCU, Black Panther isn't really an origin story, so much as it is a continuation of what we see in Civil War. There's a good deal of exposition at the start of the movie, which provides us with some background. And we do see how the Black Panther powers are conveyed, but this isn't an origin story in the classic sense, which is kind of unique for the MCU. Likewise, apart from some mentions of the events in Civil War and the inclusion of Agent Ross, this film doesn't really feel as entwined with the MCU as other movies in the series do. Don't get me wrong, it's still very much an MCU movie. It's got the banter and quips and jokes, the super tech that borders on magic, the spectacle and barrage of CGI-heavy battles and action scenes, but it feels a bit more removed from the you of the MCU than most other MCU movies. In spite of all the classic MCU-isms, Black Panther still manages to have a unique feel to it. The cultural representation and significance of that is impossible to ignore, and definitely greatly contributes to that unique feeling. The world building on display here is among the best in the MCU. It makes you want to explore Wakanda, not only the location, but the culture and customs too. Rewatching this film, I was struck by just how many truly solid characters there are. I already briefly mentioned it before, but Chadwick Boseman really did bring something special to the character of T'Challa. Although he fits in with all the other MCU heroes, this character definitely feels a little different. Even apart from the superhero side, he's already in a leadership position, and he's a very measured leader who has to step into a difficult role in this film. And then you've got a bunch of strong female characters surrounding him and making everything possible. Shuri is essential as the tech and science brains behind everything. Okoye is a loyal and powerful force to be reckoned with, and Nakia provides not only skills as a spy, but also a voice of reason. There are a ton of characters in this movie, but even the secondary and tertiary Wakandan characters add to the story. In fact, on the protagonistic side, the only character that feels out of place and unnecessary is Agent Ross. He's not bad and doesn't really negatively affect the movie, but he also doesn't really serve much of a purpose beyond providing an additional link to Civil War. The antagonistic side is a bit more of a mixed bag for me. Claw is an interesting and somewhat entertaining villain, but his role in the film is frustratingly limited by always keeping him associated with the pre-film history of Wakanda. Instead, the role of the main villain falls to Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. And I've gotta say, I've always been fairly mixed on this character. He's a villain with a very understandable motivation, and one that makes good points, which is far better than many of the more one-dimensional villains in the MCU. But he's also frustrating to me, because he's a character whose motivations and verbalized intended outcomes never quite align with his plans or actual actions. And this brings us to the thematic components of the film. Black Panther has moments of popcorn action and typical MCU fun, but this is definitely a movie that deals with weightier topics. It's a political film that addresses the duties of not only a leader, but of a country. It presents and explores a conundrum of self-preservation versus humanitarian aid. Should Wakanda isolate themselves from the rest of the world in order to protect the secret of their wealth and technological advancement? Or should they divulge that secret to the world by helping others in a way that nobody else is capable? Combine that with the parallel themes for Killmonger's past, and you've got some compelling and thought-provoking ideas embedded within an action-packed superhero movie. Black Panther is a strong film. It's a strong superhero movie, it's a strong MCU movie, and it's one that improves a little bit with each rewatch for me. But it remains a film that I appreciate more than I love. Anybody can connect with any movie, but having some sort of similarity to latch onto can make a really big difference. Relating to a character or seeing yourself represented on screen can be huge when it comes to having a connection to a particular film. Black Panther is obviously not that type of movie for me, but it is for a ton of other people, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, it became an instant cultural phenomenon, and still is, but it wouldn't have reached that level if it wasn't such a culturally significant and historic film. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro is definitely the cultural significance. I realize that I'm probably not the most qualified person to talk about the subject, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with it or anything, but there's a reason that this film has become such a phenomenon and has impacted so many people. Prior to this movie, there had been very, very few films about black superheroes, and certainly none that were at this kind of scale. There also weren't any that celebrated African culture in the way that this film does. Now, obviously, Wakanda isn't a real country, but a good chunk of the Wakandan culture has a basis in real African culture, and it's significant that that's represented and celebrated in a blockbuster like this. Pro number 2 is the world building. The MCU has taken us to a number of different places over the years, but few of those locations have felt as fleshed out as Wakanda. There's a grand, epic quality when we first see Wakanda in this film, but even though we don't get all that much time to explore the country, it feels real and lived in. The glimpses we get into the culture and tradition and ceremonies, the clothing and hairstyles, the politics and leadership structure, even the more fantastical things like the vibranium and advanced super technology. The world building is extensive, but still leaves you wishing there was even more. The third pro has got to be the themes. Although this is an MCU superhero movie, it's certainly one of the more politically driven films in the series. This movie deals with leadership succession and the challenges of leading a country. It explores the idea of isolationism and the morality of doing nothing in the interest of self-preservation versus doing what's right, even though it could mean discovery. These ideas are explored on both the protagonistic and antagonistic side, which poses some interesting questions. On the con side, the biggest issue is the CGI, and to an extent, the action. There are certainly augmented moments that look good, but more often than not, the CG shots just feel a little subpar. There are some exciting action sequences, but much of the action here has a very video game quality to it. This is especially true when it comes to the third act. The Black Panther suit is cool and everything, but there's something less impressive and less interesting about purely CGI fight scenes. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Black Panther or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Black Panther 3.5 out of 5 paws. Despite some predictability and occasionally iffy CGI in action, this movie tells a solid story full of interesting characters, great world building, and thought-provoking thematic concepts. I would recommend Black Panther to anybody who likes superhero movies. It's a pretty standard film from that perspective, and is full of the expected MCU quips and technology, but it does go for some deeper political ideas and themes, which may be compelling for people who want something more than just popcorn action. It also has the benefit of its cultural and historic significance, which will certainly be a draw to many as well. If you liked Black Panther, I would recommend Captain America: Civil War. Although this is a broader MCU-centric film that focuses on a lot of other characters too, Civil War serves as Black Panther and T'Challa's introduction in the MCU, and the events that occur during that movie set up for this standalone Black Panther film. If you liked Okoye or the Dora Milaje, you might want to check out The Woman King, which tells a fictionalized account of the real-life Agoji warriors, who served as the inspiration for the Dora Milaje when the comics were written. And if you're interested in another film directed by Ryan Coogler, you should watch Fruitvale Station. This was Coogler's feature directorial debut, and is another important film that dramatizes the real-life shooting of Oscar Grant. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Black Panther? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite fictional country in a movie? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.